Some horror movies are about survival. These aren't. These are stories where the fight doesn't matter, where the ritual shouldn't have been performed, where the house was already claimed, where the prophecy was already written. In these films, evil isn't chasing the characters, it's waiting, and by the time they understand what's happening, it's already too late. From cursed art and haunted attractions, to ancient vampires and apocalyptic possession, these are horror movies where evil cannot be stopped, ranked from contained nightmares to absolute collapse. Let's begin. Ranked at number 10, Velvet Buzzsaw. Dan Gilroy's 2019 Velvet Buzzsaw drops you into the cutthroat world of Los Angeles contemporary art, where a good review from the right person can make a career overnight. The story centers on Morph Vanderwalt, an art critic whose opinion carries enormous weight. He moves through this world alongside gallery owner Rodora Hayes and her driven assistant Josephina, all of them chasing status and profit in equal measure. Everything changes when Josephina finds a hidden collection of paintings in her deceased neighbor's apartment. The neighbor, Vetril Dees, was a reclusive artist who spent years creating dozens of deeply unsettling works packed with violent imagery and raw emotional pain. He left behind clear instructions that everything should be destroyed after his death. Nobody listens. The gallery decides to exhibit and sell the pieces, and almost immediately collectors, critics, and investors start circling, eager to cash in. Then people start dying in ways that are impossible to explain. Rodora gets killed during a private showing when a kinetic sculpture suddenly goes haywire. An artist named Piers gets crushed by his own automated installation in his studio. A collector named Gretchen gets sealed inside a mirrored installation with no way out. Morph gets attacked in his own apartment by graffiti that literally peels itself off the wall and comes at him. The film makes it clear that Dees's trauma is driving everything. His suffering got absorbed into the paintings, and now they're targeting everyone who tried to profit from his work without respecting his wishes. That's exactly why Velvet Buzzsaw sits at number 10 on this list. The evil is real, and it hits hard, but it stays tied to the artwork itself. Deadly, yes, but limited in what it can actually reach. Ranked at number 9, Shelby Oaks. Chris Stuckman's 2024 Shelby Oaks mixes psychological horror with found footage in a way that feels uncomfortably real. The story follows Mia, a woman who never got over her sister Riley disappearing years ago without any explanation. Riley had been part of this amateur paranormal group called the Paranormal Paranoids, a team that documented supernatural cases and posted everything online. Their last investigation had something to do with a mysterious entity connected to a place called Shelby Oaks. After that, Riley was just gone. The movie moves between what's happening with Mia now and archived footage from the group's old recordings. You get these grainy handheld videos, uncomfortable interviews, and moments where something shows up just at the edge of the frame before disappearing. The entity itself is almost never seen clearly, which makes it worse. Your brain fills in the gaps, and whatever it comes up with is scarier than anything the film could show directly. Mia starts going through the old tapes and retracing everywhere Riley went, and the search takes over her life completely. Things start happening around her that she can't explain. Sounds with no source. Shadows that move wrong. The camera will hold on an empty room just long enough for you to feel like something's standing there just out of sight. Everything looks real and grounded, shot in normal houses and everyday spaces, which makes it harder to shake off. What makes Shelby Oaks different from typical horror is that the evil never attacks directly. It just quietly dismantles everything. It cuts people off from each other. It messes with what's real. Mia's grip on things starts slipping the deeper she digs. That's why Shelby Oaks sits at number 9. It works slowly and quietly, but once it fixes on someone, getting away starts feeling less and less possible. Ranked at number 8, Whistle. Corin Hardy Whistle, 2025, builds its horror around something almost laughably simple, a small, ordinary whistle that has something ancient and hungry living inside it. A group of young adults end up with it under pretty unremarkable circumstances. Nobody thinks much of it at first. It just looks like a cheap old whistle. Then someone blows it, and something blows back. Nothing attacks right away. That's what makes it so unsettling. Instead, things just start feeling wrong. Figures show up far away, standing still, watching. Sounds come from empty spaces that have no business making noise. Everyone gets that creeping feeling of being followed before they actually see anything. Whatever answered that whistle is in no rush. It's patient in a way that feels deeply unnatural. Things get worse as more people use it. Anyone who blows the whistle gets marked, like they've signed something they can't take back. Throwing it away doesn't work. Trying to destroy it just makes everything more aggressive. Doors start slamming on their own. Figures appear in hallways. Mirrors start showing reflections that move just a half second too slow. The entity doesn't stay put either. It follows the sound and it follows whoever made it. The film keeps everything visually tight. Dark interiors, isolated roads, cramped spaces where the sound of the whistle cuts through silence like something sharp. The scares aren't about big explosive moments. They're about dread building so slowly you don't notice how scared you are until you can barely breathe. Eventually it becomes clear the whistle isn't just an object, it's a doorway. Whatever comes through can't be sent back. Even when someone tries to break the cycle, the curse just moves to the next person who touches it. The ending leaves no room for hope. The evil doesn't get destroyed. It gets handed off. The whistle survives, sitting quietly, waiting for the next person who thinks blowing it sounds harmless. That's why Whistle lands at number 8, a contained curse that refuses to stay contained. Ranked at number 7, The Watchers. Ishana Shyamalan's The Watchers, 2024, builds its horror around being watched and having absolutely nowhere to run. Mina is traveling through rural Ireland when her car breaks down in the middle of this massive forest. Night comes fast, and she finds this strange bunker shelter called the Coop, where 3 other people are already living. They've been there a while and they have rules that sound bizarre until you understand what's outside. Every night they have to stand in front of a large glass wall and let themselves be observed. Out in the darkness of the forest, creatures called the Watchers study them. Nobody knows exactly what they are or what they want, but breaking the rules isn't an option. Don't go out after dark. Don't turn away from the glass. Show yourself when night comes. Simple and absolute. The forest makes escape impossible during the day too. Paths loop back around. GPS stops working. Every attempt to find a way out just leads deeper into confusion and disorientation. While searching for answers, the group finds traces left behind by previous captives, and something even more disturbing, signs that the Watchers can copy human appearance. That's when the paranoia inside the shelter really takes hold. Everyone starts looking at each other differently. Small things feel wrong, movements that are slightly off, reactions that come a beat too late. The idea that one of them might have already been replaced becomes impossible to ignore. The forest looks genuinely beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All dense trees and darkness pressing against that lit-up glass wall at night, with shadowy figures standing just beyond it. The ending makes clear these creatures aren't stuck in those woods. They learn. They adapt. They imitate well enough to walk among people undetected. Even after Mina thinks she's gotten out safely, something feels wrong. That quiet, creeping feeling that something followed her is what puts the Watchers at number 7. It doesn't overwhelm you. It just replaces things slowly until resistance seems pointless. Ranked at number 6, A Night of Horror, Nightmare Radio. A Night of Horror, Nightmare Radio 2019 uses an anthology format to stack up layers of dread, but the real terror lives inside the framing story wrapped around everything else. Rod Wilson is a late-night radio host who's been doing this long enough to know his audience. He broadcasts alone from this dimly lit station, introducing horror stories sent in by callers, each one getting darker and more intense than the last. Then a kid starts calling in, a young boy, scared out of his mind, saying someone is trying to kill him. Rod figures it's a prank, someone messing with the show, trying to get a reaction out of him on air. He keeps broadcasting and tries to brush it off, but the boy keeps calling back, and the details he's giving start matching up with the station itself in ways that can't be explained. The radio booth starts feeling less like a workplace and more like a trap. The building feels completely empty, but things keep happening. Doors lock on their own. Lights go out in hallways nobody should be in. The security monitors show movement in places that should be vacant. Every sound gets amplified in that enclosed space until the studio feels like it's closing in. The anthology stories being broadcast start bleeding into what's actually happening around Rod. The line between the horror he's narrating and the horror he's living in starts getting thin. He realizes the calls from the boy aren't interruptions anymore. They're warnings about something already inside the building with him. By the end, the supernatural force has made itself completely at home in the station. Rod isn't the guy telling scary stories from a safe distance anymore. He's become part of the story himself. The booth that gave him control over the narrative has become the thing holding him inside it. That's why Nightmare Radio sits at number 6. The evil travels through signals and stories in physical space, and by the time you realize you're part of the broadcast, it's already too late. Ranked at number 5, Hellhouse LLC. Stephen Cognetti's Hellhouse LLC 2015 takes an abandoned hotel and turns it into something that feels genuinely cursed. The story follows Michael, a haunted house organizer who decides to set up his latest attraction inside the Eves house, a long, empty hotel with a reputation nobody talks about openly. From the first day his crew arrives, things go wrong. Doors close on their own. The temperature drops for no reason. Equipment stops working and nobody can figure out why. The whole film is told through found footage, security cameras, GoPros, the staff wear around the building, surveillance recordings. It works because everything feels immediate and real. You're watching alongside these people as the hotel starts pushing back against them. Shadows move in corners where the cameras can barely pick anything up. Props and set pieces get rearranged by something that isn't any of the crew. The dread just keeps building throughout every hour of preparation. The final setup night is when everything breaks apart. Crew members go missing without warning. Apparitions show up in hallways and rooms, caught partially on tape before the footage gets disrupted. Communication between staff stops working. The exits become harder to find. The remaining crew gets trapped inside the deepest part of the attraction, where the physical and psychological terror merge into something unbearable. Distorted faces appear. Lights go haywire. Every hallway feels like it's closing in. The history of the Eves house eventually comes out, and it's violent. The evil inside has latched onto the haunted attraction and made it part of itself. Every attempt to shut things down or get out fails completely. By the end, everyone is either dead or possessed. The hotel's presence remains totally intact. Hellhouse LLC earns the number 5 spot because the evil here doesn't slow down. It takes over every corner of the building and every person inside it. The found footage makes you feel trapped right alongside the crew, and the ending makes one thing absolutely clear. Once Hell House opens its doors, nobody leaves. Ranked at number 4, Veronica. Paco Plaza's Veronica, 2017, is set in early 1990s Madrid, and it hits differently from most possession films because everything about it feels grounded and painfully real. The story follows Veronica, a teenage girl who's basically running the household while her mom works constantly. She's looking after her 3 younger siblings, managing school, and carrying more responsibility than any kid her age should have to. During a solar eclipse, she and some friends use a Ouija board to try and contact her dead father. It's the kind of thing teenagers do when grief has nowhere else to go, but whatever responds during that session isn't her father. Things go wrong fast. Shadows move across walls in ways that make no sense. Objects shift on their own. Whispers start coming from nowhere at night. Her friends were skeptical going in, but they stop being skeptical pretty quickly when the entity starts making itself known around all of them. It becomes clear early on that this thing isn't just messing around. It's aggressive and it has a target. The film stays in tight, realistic spaces the whole time. Veronica's apartment, dark bedrooms, narrow hallways. The camera holds on things longer than feels comfortable, catching movement and distortion at the edges. The sound design does a lot of the heavy lifting too. Knocks, whispered voices, footsteps that belong to nobody. You feel the entity's presence even in scenes where nothing visible is happening. Veronica's condition gets worse as the film goes on. She tries desperately to keep her siblings safe while her body and mind take the full weight of the attacks. Seizures, hallucinations, constant terror. The familiar spaces of her home become something threatening and inescapable. By the ending, it's clear the demon has her completely. That's why Veronica sits at number 4. The evil is personal and suffocating, and it never lets go. Ranked at number 3, Nosferatu. Robert Eggers' 2024. Reimagining of Nosferatu takes the classic vampire story and strips it down to something cold, inevitable, and deeply unsettling. Thomas Hutter is a young real estate clerk sent to a remote castle in Transylvania to sort out some property business for a client named Count Orlok. When he arrives, the place is impressive in this heavy, oppressive way. Orlok himself is strange from the first meeting, but Hutter tries to push past the discomfort and get the job done. That gets harder as he starts noticing things. Orlok doesn't behave like any person Hutter has encountered. His habits, his hours, the way he moves through the castle. The horror builds slowly, and Eggers lets it breathe, using long shots of shadowed hallways, candles throwing weak light against stone walls, and landscapes swallowed by mist. The castle feels ancient and suffocating in equal measure. The real terror isn't just what Orlok does to Hutter, it's what follows him everywhere he goes. Disease, death, decay spreading outward from wherever he travels like rot, moving through wood. Once Hutter understands the full scale of what Orlok is, he tries to get back to warn his wife Ellen and everyone around her. But Orlok is already moving. The vampire doesn't rush. That's part of what makes him so frightening. He's methodical and patient, preying on fear and vulnerability, with the quiet confidence of something that knows time is always on its side. Villagers start dying. His influence keeps spreading. The ending ties courage and tragedy together in a way that doesn't offer much comfort. Hutter finds a way to delay Orlok using distraction and light, but the cost is devastating, and the mark Orlok leaves behind doesn't disappear just because he's gone. Nosferatu earns the number 3 spot because the evil here is ancient, unhurried, and absolutely certain of itself. Some forces don't need to be fast, they just need to keep moving forward, and nothing seems capable of fully stopping them. Ranked at number 2, The First Omen. Arkasha Stevenson's 2024, The First Omen goes back to where it all started, showing how Damien Thorne came into the world and what that arrival cost everyone around him. The film is set in the 1970s and follows Catherine, a woman who has no idea that the child she's carrying is meant to bring something ancient and terrible into existence. Strange things start happening before he's even born. Objects move when nobody touches them. Shadows stay in places they shouldn't. Animals react to things the people around them can't see or feel. Word spreads to priests and investigators who piece together fragments of an old prophecy. They figure out fast that this isn't a normal situation. People who get too close to what's coming start having accidents, getting sick, dying in ways that don't add up. The evil moves through city apartments, large estates, and remote countryside locations like it has no boundaries at all, which it doesn't. Catherine is at the center of everything, and her position is brutal. She swings between refusing to believe what people tell her and being terrified that it might all be true. Every time someone tries to perform a protective ritual or warn her about what Damien represents, something goes wrong. The horror doesn't slow down in response to their efforts. It speeds up. By the time the final act arrives, there's no more room for doubt. Damien's nature is undeniable. Every attempt to contain the prophecy or get ahead of it fails. The film ends on this quiet, suffocating note. Evil this deeply rooted can't be stopped. It can only be delayed while it waits for the right moment. The First Omen takes the number 2 spot on this list because the darkness it portrays is patient, methodical, and woven into the fabric of things from the very beginning. Ranked at number 1, When Evil Lurks. Demian Rugna's When Evil Lurks 2013 takes small-town horror and pushes it somewhere most films don't have the nerve to go. The story follows Luis, a local policeman, and his wife Anna, who get pulled into something terrible after a young girl disappears without explanation. Their town is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, quiet and seemingly removed from anything dangerous. That sense of safety is exactly what makes everything that follows so devastating. The evil in this film doesn't announce itself loudly. It works quietly at first, getting its hooks into people before anyone realizes what's happening. Neighbors start behaving in ways that feel wrong. Small things seem off in ways that are hard to put into words. The everyday spaces of the town, homes, tree-lined streets, the forested edges of the community start feeling like they belong to something else entirely. As Luis and Anna dig deeper, the violence gets harder to look away from. People under the entity's influence turn on each other. Shadows move on their own. Reality itself starts feeling unreliable in ways that go beyond what they can rationalize. The entity has no interest in staying in one place either. It moves, spreads, and gets into anyone nearby. Every attempt to trap it, drive it out, or confront it directly just makes things worse and more chaotic. The ending doesn't offer any comfort. The full weight of what they're dealing with becomes clear in the final confrontations, which are brutal and deeply unsettling. By the time the credits roll, the entity is still out there, free to keep doing what it does. Evil Lurks takes the number 1 spot because the evil here is genuinely relentless. It adapts, it personalizes its approach to whoever it's targeting, and it cannot be stopped. The film makes you feel that in your gut. Some things can only be survived, and even that isn't guaranteed. And that's the breakdown. If you're figuring out where to start, go easy. Velvet Buzzsaw eases you in with slow building tension that keeps you guessing. Hellhouse LLC hits harder, dragging you into chaos that never really lets up. And if you want something that absolutely refuses to give you room to breathe, When Evil Lurks is waiting for you. If this helped you figure out your next watch, drop a comment telling me which one you're starting with, hit like, and subscribe. More horror deep dives are coming, and the next one gets a whole lot darker.